Hello, my gorgeous ones. Welcome to Alicia Budget Beauty. My name is Alicia. Here on my channel, I love all things affordable fashion and beauty. I do hauls, tutorials, reviews, deep dives sometimes, all sorts of fun stuff. So if that sounds good to you, please subscribe, stick around, be a friend. All right, you guys, I've been contemplating doing this video for a while now. And I had the idea back whenever I compared two palettes. I was curious if they had the same formula in them. And it was the Juvia's Place Afro-Galactic palette and the Lunar Beauty Siren Sunset palette. And I had a video where I did use them on both eyes and determined ultimately that they were not the exact same formula, but I think they might be maybe made in the same manufacturer. And that got me to start thinking, well, where are all of my palettes made? Like, is this something that we just passively consume and never look to see where our things are coming from? And my whole angle from this video is not to say that it is bad to get a palette made in a certain country. It is more so to get you guys to start looking at your collection and start maybe contemplating if possibly you may be duping yourself across brands, that if they're coming from the same place, you know, you might possibly have the same formula palette to palette. Or also, and I think this is my biggest takeaway, and I'm going to do a part 2 about this, about the prices of indie and how they've gone up so much. But I also want you guys to consider that if you are getting palettes from one country and one place, possibly, you know, a manufacturer, and another brand also has theirs coming from the same place, why is there such a huge difference in price? It's just something to consider. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to go through a bunch of my palettes, a bunch of the brands actually, and tell you guys where they are actually made. And I think some of them might surprise you. So if that is interesting to you, keep on watching. All right, you guys, I apologize. My dog was going crazy. If you could hear her in the background, well, I know you could because she was such a barky butt. She gets so excited when someone comes home, and my son and my husband came home from a baseball practice, so she was going bonkers. So I apologize. But these are the two palettes that got me first thinking about all of this and wanting to check out where palettes are made. So it was the Afro-Galactic palette from Juvia's and then the Lunar Beauty palette from Siren Sunset. No, the Siren Sunset palette from Lunar Beauty. Okay, so when I opened up the Afro-Galactic palette, I noticed that you're not going to be able to really tell because I've already used it, and it's where the gradient is already been worn off. But I noticed that the duochromes in here had this sort of plaid imprint in them, and I had never seen that before except for in the Lunar Beauty palette that I got maybe like a month, 2 months before. And so I was like, wait a minute, are these the same formulas? Where are these? I knew that Lunar Beauty was made in China. Manny had said that he switched manufacturers a while back because he could do it cheaper in China. It was getting too expensive in the US, and at least he was very transparent about that and said that he switched. So I already knew that Lunar Beauty is made in China, but also so is Juvia's. I checked my palettes. They're all made in China. Now, what is interesting, we'll see some of these brands in this video that some of their palettes may be made in the US and then some may be made in Taiwan. It's not always the same palette to palette, which I think is notable because you know how sometimes we think the formula in this palette is different than this one from the same brand. Well, some of these brands, just their palettes are made in different places, so it is a different formula. Just start checking the back of your palettes. Now, not all brands put that information on the palettes, which is frustrating, and I do feel like it should be mandatory, but we'll get into that in a minute. So China and China, and then if you see if it's PRC, that's the People's Republic of China. Now, I do want to say real quick, just because it's made in, I think there's such a negative connotation with China. We hear that, and a lot of times people are like, I don't trust it, you know, like with the Temu Gate. We'll say that. That's something I feel like I've been a little bit bullied away from sharing on my channel, shopping Temu. So I have no reservations about shopping from China personally. What I do find interesting though is a lot of people do, like the hypocrisy of people really coming at me for shopping Temu. And I'm not going to get all into that. Like I know there's all these different facets and all this, but let's just say, let's pare it down to just the people that say, I don't trust makeup from China, so I don't shop Temu. And yet I guarantee you they have stuff in their collection that was made from China. They just don't realize. So some of the brands and palettes that are made in China, my e.l.f. Retro Paradise palette, which I need to use this again. This was such a good, this is my favorite e.l.f. palette ever. China. Wet n Wild. China. BH Cosmetics, everyone's past love. China. Perfusion Cosmetics, China. LA Girl. Trace Luce Beauty. And Luna Magic Beauty. I'm just getting started. Definitely more from China. I'm just going to grab some more palettes. All right. I'm not going to say China after each one of these like I did just a second ago. Just all of these that I'm going to hold up were made in China. Odin's Eye, She Glam, Mora Cosmetics, Blend Bunny, Cosmic Brushes. I'm going to say more when I get done about theories about all this. Iconic London, NYX, Alter Ego Beauty, IBY Beauty, Simply Posh Cosmetics, Beauty Bay, Nomad Cosmetics, and then we have some of these that it's not on the palette, but I happen to know that it's made in China, like Gourmand Girls, but it doesn't say it on the palette. Now, again, no problem with these things being made in China. Tons of our stuff is made in China. Most of our clothes, most of our parts, like there's nothing wrong with that at all. And just because it's made in China, I think this might be also a misconception that when people see China, they think private label. Now, a lot of private labels come out of China, but there can also be US manufacturers that are also private labeled. Just in case you don't know what private labeling means, it means, and it's not just with makeup, it's with anything. It means that you have this manufacturer that has like these set formulas or this set, you know, even like food, something like that, where the brand can then put their labeling, their marketing on it, but it is not unique to the brand. The brand doesn't own the formula. Then, however, some of those same places that produce these things can make specific formulas for brands if the brand pays more to have that done, and then they own that formula. An example of that is Gourmand Girls. Also, I know Nomad Cosmetics does this. So it doesn't mean, China doesn't mean bad. But what I think is interesting about that all these brands I just showed you all come out of the same place is, say, like your cosmic brushes that everyone is so crazy over, myself included. I love the formula. I think it's so good. I do think it's interesting that people will rave and rave and rave about a palette that's made in China and not even realize that it's made in China. And some of these people, you know, look down upon things made in China. It's just because they're not actually taking the time to look and see where their products are made. The other thing is interesting to me that if cosmic brushes can have this good of a formula, and it's made in China. So probably it didn't cost a whole lot to make the palette, and they know that. Cosmic Brushes knows that. They know what they pay for this. They keep the cost down. Their palettes are very, very affordable, in the 20 to 30 something dollar range. So it's just interesting to me that perhaps other brands, when you start looking on the back, and they're also made in China, they could have their own formula. Absolutely. But they also might not, but they're charging $80 for their palettes. It's interesting. You start to wonder, are these from the same places? Do they have their own formula? Why is there such a big gap, in price? And then also, if you are someone that, ethically, for whatever reason, you don't want to purchase from China, you may not even realize that half your collection is from there because you haven't really just flipped over the back of your palette. Again, I'm not trying to convince you guys not to buy from China, because I've got all these palettes from China, but it's just something I think we need to be aware about. Now, I'm also going to show you some other palettes that are made in the US, Taiwan, Italy, and Germany. And some of these also may surprise you. All right, I actually realized I left 2 off that were China, and that is Unearthly, although this was when it's Alien. So I have not gotten an Unearthly palette since they were Alien Cosmetics, but if you do have ones that were Alien before they changed the name, it was China. And then also Glamlight's palettes are made in China. Okay, so here's a few examples of ones that could vary palette to palette within the same brand. We have Tarte. So the Maneater After Dark was made in Taiwan, but then the Tarteist Pro Remix palette was made in the USA. Another example of that is Pat McGrath. So all the motherships are Italy. And then you have the holiday palettes here that are actually made in the US. But this is another example. ColourPop is one that I was about to talk about, where it says US and imported ingredients, but it doesn't say from where. So it could be China, it could be, who knows, it could be Italy as well, but it was made in the US with imported ingredients, while all the motherships are made in Italy. And it's always kind of been a known factor that higher end, like really reliable makeup and ingredients come from Italy and Germany. So I think it's interesting to see which ones are made from those places. So we have Il Maquillage is made in Italy. The Rose Quartz Huda is Italy. Making sure. Yes, it says made in Italy. It's hard to see on the back of this one. I didn't want to say that and then be wrong. Also, Uma Beauty, Italy. Kiko Milano, Italy. Natasha Denona is Italy. Also, Italy is What's Up Beauty and Nabla. And then here's an example of one that Glaminatrix, and I didn't bring out all the palettes that I know that they used to hand press. Now they have, I believe, a manufacturer that puts them together for them because they got too big, but they've been very transparent about it. So I believe that's done locally in Australia, where Glaminatrix operates out of. Also, other ones that I didn't put in here, like Copacetic Cosmetics, Divina, ones that I know that they are hand making. I didn't include those because obviously those are going to come from where the brand is located. So we have Lethal. The Lethal Cosmetics is Germany. Also, okay, then we have Buxom, and Buxom is made in the USA. Also, made in the USA is Laura Lee Los Angeles, unless she's changed from this. This was the Candy Skies. So I haven't had anything since this palette from Laura Lee. Let's see. Alamada Cosmetics, at least the Encanto palette, was made in Italy. ABH, made in the USA. This is the only ABH palette that I own now. I decluttered my other ones because I don't think it's very good. Okay. Then we have Melt is USA. This is Beauty for Real. This is the Golden Hour palette, just in case you haven't seen it. It's really pretty. This is Taiwan. The Jouer Ultra Foil is USA. This is one, though, that also says and imported components. Where they're imported from, I have no idea. This is the ColourPop palette as the example that also says, so ColourPop, you know, they were supposed to have their own factory that they make all their shadows from. But I thought this was interesting. Not all of their palettes say this, but this one, and this is the Play It Jewel, it says made in the USA and or imported ingredients parts. So I just thought that was interesting because everyone always says, well, ColourPop makes all their own stuff. But they imported some from somewhere, not sure where. Ofra is actually, it does say made in the USA by Ofra Cosmetic Laboratories. So I believe they really do make their own stuff. And then we have Flower Beauty, at least the Desert Lights and the Jungle Lights are made in Taiwan. That's not all the palettes I own, but I tried to go through all the brands and see where are they made. And I hope this was fascinating to you guys because it certainly was to me. And I thought it was crazy that I had never taken the time to truly look and check. And for me, it doesn't really matter too much to me where they're made because I don't have like a hard line stance about not purchasing from a certain country. But what it did tell me is, okay, say for instance, my Il Makiage and my What's Up Beauty, those perform so beautifully. Are they the most, like the Il Makiage, is it like indie level quality, like multi-chrome? No, but it always just looks so professional and beautiful and easy to work with. And I was like, oh, it's made in Italy. Italy is like really, really fine quality, you know, materials. Also, I was like, oh, well, that makes sense about What's Up Beauty because that palette performs so, so, so well. The other thing that I just think is something to keep in mind, again, is when you're watching creators, and I'm in this pool. I'm a creator. I review palettes. I recommend them. But a lot of times creators now are just like, oh my gosh, this is the best formula. This is amazing. This formula is so much better than this other brand. And sometimes now I'm wondering, is it though? Is it the same? Is it from the same place? Like, these are made in China. Doesn't mean that comes from the same factory. Maybe they do pay for their own, you know, maybe they do pay for their own formula, which is what I kind of always hope, you know, that a brand that I'm purchasing from a brand that has their own formula. You know, if a brand is really transparent about it and says, hey, our stuff's made in China, it is private label, but they keep the cost down to reflect that, then I'm fine with that. I just want to know though, am I paying too much, you know, for a palette that's possibly made in China and it's not their own formula? I want to know these things, and brands are not being very transparent about that these days. And I'm going to kind of go more into that in a second video, just about price gouging and where the indie beauty community has gotten to the point. But I just think it first starts with informing yourself and just flipping over those palettes, checking out where they're made. It just gets you to start really thinking and being more intentional about your purchasing, what you're bringing in, and you start to cross compare. It'll get in your head, I promise, but I think that it will benefit you as well. You guys let me know if you thought that this video was interesting. I'm really curious what the feedback about this will be. And thank you so much for watching. And remember, have fun shopping, budget shopping. Bye.